And so right now it feels like the closest we've been so far to all-out conflict.
Now, Hamas has warned that Israel will pay the price after a senior Hezbollah commander was killed in an airstrike on the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Ibrahim Akwil was one of several Hezbollah members among the 14 people reported to have died. Let's speak to Oliver Marsden, who's in Beirut for The Times. Morning, Oliver.
Morning.
Just give us a sense of what it feels like to be in Lebanon, in Beirut right now.
Well, as you can imagine, last night and this morning, the situation and the atmosphere is quite tense. It's been, well, I don't know really how to describe it, an incredible week of strikes and attacks, which culminated last night in the assassination, as you said, of Ibrahim Akil. I was down at the site and the atmosphere was very tense. There were many members of Hezbollah and many civilians around. It was sort of chaos and panic. This was a major security breach, another major security breach this week for Hezbollah. And understandably, they're incredibly worried, angry, and paranoid. When I was down there, Hezbollah members were threatening to smash our cameras, smash my phone. They're not really taking any chances anymore, and they're very worried.
And how much do Hezbollah members represent the kind of wider view within Lebanon? What's the level of support in Lebanon for Hezbollah?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. There is a large supporter base amongst the Shia community, especially in Dahieh, the southern suburb of Beirut, and in southern Lebanon, where the strikes are happening daily. Across Lebanon, there's mixed opinions about Hezbollah. Some people believe that Lebanon's only in this problem because of Hezbollah, and on the other side of that, there are many people, from the Christian community, from the Sunni community, who believe that Hezbollah are the kind of bastion, the kind of defense against Israeli aggression, and some people even believe that without Hezbollah, Israel wouldn't stop where they are now. They would be coming into Lebanon and they would be trying to take more Lebanese land. So as this continues and as the strikes keep happening, as targeted assassinations in civilian areas in southern Beirut happen, I feel that the support for Hezbollah actually grows rather than diminishes.
And clearly, you say you were down in the aftermath, at the scene in the aftermath of that attack yesterday, that Israeli airstrike, which took out a Hezbollah commander. Presumably, as you speak to people down there is a real fear of further escalation.
Of course. I spoke to one young man who he lived 2 doors down from the strike site, and his parents lived a bit further down the street. He was packing up his stuff. His wife was at home when the strike happened. They were moving. They're trying to move out of Beirut. Hassan Nasrallah said in his speech on Thursday that all red lines have been crossed, and so right now it feels like the closest we've been so far to all-out conflict. Hezbollah and Israel are already at war, but it feels like this could very much escalate into a wider regional conflict. John Kirby from the White House said that, war is not inevitable. There is a lot of diplomatic negotiations and conversations happening behind the scene, but the more that these targeted assassinations happen, the more strikes that happen in the south, it feels like we are very much at the edge, and I'm not entirely sure of a way back. For Hezbollah, this is very embarrassing and a huge security breach. So we're not sure what their retaliation will be, but I believe that they will have to do something rather large. They'll have to show face, and it's not looking or feeling very good right now here in Lebanon.
And you talk about it being embarrassing for Hezbollah. Clearly, it's also been hugely damaging to their organisation because a number of people involved in the organisation have been taken out. But my understanding is that there are many, many people who are involved with Hezbollah. Do we have a sense of whether they have the ability to launch some kind of major attack against Israel, or to react in a way that they want to? Do they have the capability to do that, bearing in mind the attacks of the last week?
Of course. I mean, Hezbollah is an incredibly significant and powerful fighting force here in Lebanon and the region. I mean, they have a stockpile of hundreds of thousands of missiles. They have the backing of Iran. Um, there are Iran-backed militias in Iraq and Syria who have already confirmed their support for Hezbollah should something happen. Now, yeah, the killing of these commanders, these top commanders, especially Ibrahim Akil, who was the head of the Radwan forces, which I guess is like the equivalent of the sort of SAS or something. It's the Hezbollah version. This is a huge blow, but this isn't going to stop Hezbollah. They are extremely well equipped, extremely well funded, and these people can just be replaced. We had the assassination of Fawad Shukr less than 2 months ago. A similar airstrike on Dahir killed him, and he was replaced. Now there's the strike on Ibrahim Akil. He will be replaced, and a fight with Hezbollah for Israel is a very different fight than with Hamas. They're very different beasts in terms of the numbers of soldiers that they have, of militants, and the equipment and the backing they have. We last year, very kind of quite randomly, they invited all the press to what you could describe as kind of war games up in the mountains of Lebanon. They showed off a lot of their arsenal, their weaponry, what they're capable of doing. It was quite impressive, and it came at a very strange time when nothing really was happening, but only a few months before October the 7th. So, I think they're very capable, and I don't think this is going to hinder them in the long run.
You mentioned that, of course, Iran back Hezbollah. Have we had much public response to what's gone on from Iran?
Nothing yet, nothing major, not since the assassination last night. But again, usually Iran are responding and saying how much, that they back Hezbollah, that they see Israeli attacks like these as a criminal, treacherous, quote unquote, events. They they talk about the civilian death toll, the fact that these pagers and walkie-talkies that blew up were embedded within the civilian population and blew up. They believe that this constitutes a war crime and crimes against humanity. And this is the usual kind of rhetoric that we have from Iran. It's anything that Israel does, they see as an act of war, and they see as a kind of illegal and intense reaction from an occupying force that they believe are in Israel and Palestine.
And finally, Oliver, before I let you go, just for people who aren't familiar with Beirut, just give us a sense of how life has really changed, what life was like, if it has, before the events of this week with the walkie-talkie and the pager attacks, and how people are behaving now. Are people going out to bars, to restaurants? Are they going to supermarkets? Day-to-day life, how is it being impacted?
Well, it's funny you say that, because yesterday I was thinking the same thing. And driving around, I went down to the south, the southern border, to a city called Sur, and on the beach there were people sunbathing, there were men jogging, there were women in bikinis sunbathing. Back in Beirut last night, as I drove back from Dahir back home, there were people in bars, people in the restaurants. I mean, the Lebanese have this reputation of sort of quote unquote being resilient. They are starting, unfortunately, to get used to this. One girl told me yesterday that we're used to this, we carry on. The attacks now are becoming more regular, and obviously Lebanon went through a major catastrophic civil war from 1975 to 1990, and then again in 2000 they had the war with Israel in 2006, and life goes on. The economy, which is already on its knees following the economic collapse, it needs to keep going. It needs to keep working. So restaurants are in fact even opening up. People are eating out. People are drinking. They're scared. There was way less tourism this summer, including Lebanese expats who live abroad. Not so many came back for the summer as they usually do. The streets are a bit more quiet, but considering what's happening, there is still a buzz about Beirut and life is still going on.
Oliver, thank you so much for that insight. We will speak again. That is Oliver Marsden, who is in Beirut for The Times.